Now, Oren, besides social media, there is a rising product which is the artificial intelligence. Have you seen uh, in any way the AI contributing to more anti-Semitism? Especially, it has made it easier to create and generate contents.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hilarious to think, hilarious in a very dark way, that there'd be any sort of um, tools that make anti-Semitism even more common, right? I mean, it's like you think it's not, it's kind of common enough. So listen, I know that we did a study last year, and I know 3/4 of Americans, according to that study, are deeply concerned about the harms of the misuse of generative AI, right? Tools like whether it's Chat GPT or other stuff, or things that can create video or deep fakes, right? Um, so, I mean, I think in general, we are concerned about misinformation, about fake content, etc. Um, and of course, like that fake content is going to be used to spread anti-Semitism and hate, because anti-Semitism and hate is often fake content by its nature, right? I mean, no one's, you know what I mean? So what I'm concerned about, to answer your question, is will, you know, artificial intelligence make the anti-Semitism more believable for some people, right? Because the images will be powerful, because the stories it'll tell are about winning hearts and minds. Will it identify, you know, the type of video that will seem so real? And so will it be harder for people to tell the difference between what is anti-Semitism and what is not? Yes, I am concerned about that. And frankly, Omar, that to me is my biggest concern about anti-Semitism completely. Anti-Semitism is bad. Not being able to identify anti-Semitism scares me more. And I think the artificial intelligence will make our job and will make people's resilience to hate and anti-Semitism potentially more difficult. So we need folks to be asking questions now, policymakers, industry professionals, about how to implement safeguards, right, that prevent technology from being weaponized at its early stages.
So, beside the fact that anti-Semitism has been normalized in many places, if I understood you correctly, your concern is that AI will play a greater role in normalizing even more anti-Semitism online. I mean, what should be done about this? I mean, how can you fight this?
Right? I mean, like, what happens if somebody has a question and, the AI algorithms are based on, data online, right? These massive amounts of data. And some of that includes biased, whether it's anti-Semitism or other forms of hate. These are the big questions that people are struggling with. How do you make sure, if you're taking in tons of data, that the data that it's learning from is not inherently include this hate? And these are the safeguards that need to be implemented, right? To make sure that as these technologies are being developed, is that they're not just promoting disinformation, harassment, and extremism. So let me, one way, I don't think this is the only way, but one way, right, is to understand, again, how do you identify anti-Semitism and other forms of hate? Like, what do you need? So, like, for example, ADL has a hate symbols database, right? My team, nobody knows like the language of anti-Semitism, the symbols, the codes, how it's used in the real world and online better than we do. I mean, this is like, we see it every single day. So we have, in some ways, probably the world's most robust data set of anti-Semitism that we can use to teach algorithms how to identify anti-Semitism, right? So in the same way, so the hope, though, is that then that helps people, identify and action that. And so, we work with, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, government entities, non-government, all the time. I mean, part of ADL's job is to educate people about anti-Semitism and to make our insights and analysis available. The question is, how do you do that at scale to potentially be used in a way to help those who are creating these technologies to create an immediate understanding of this anti-Semitism so that it doesn't like overtake what they're trying to build. So, I mean, that's one way, is utilizing the expertise and the examples and the data that organizations like ADL has.
What advice do you have, Oren, to Jewish social media users? How can they safely navigate online space? Because their life has been deeply impacted both offline and online. But as you said, people are online. Their life is becoming online. So what advice do you have based on the experience you have, based on what ADL has been trying to do? If our listeners now are asking you for this advice.
Yeah. So, and I want to note that there are two ways that I think, again, it's not only people in the Jewish community, but others could be impacted by anti-Semitism online. One is the sort of normalization of it because it's part of the content on the platforms that one exists, right? It's kind of the steady stream. But the other is how technology and platforms are weaponized as delivery systems for anti-Semitism. So for what I mean by that is, swatting, right? Where swatting is where people call in a fake bomb threat or, to law enforcement and say somebody's about to blow up this synagogue, let's just say, or somebody's in there and they're going to go kill people. And it's a fake thing. And it's designed to have law enforcement respond with their SWAT team, right? To disrupt services or, it can be a dangerous situation when people are coming in, right? Guns hot. So swatting is a tactic that has been used by trolls and anti-Semites and others. So for us, finding ways to create more robust laws about swatting, meaning the exploitation of platforms, often because swatting is often used in these, online spaces, not just like a phone call, although that's possible too. That strengthens the protection of the Jewish community and others. Having better laws about how people are exploiting technology is just one way. The other is, I think, again, to your average person who's going online and probably seeing these terrible things, people should feel empowered to report that, report it to the platform itself. If, especially if they have like a trust and safety, group as part of them, they need to hear from those people, report it to ADL. We get tons of reports because then we can sort of elevate it. And part of those discussions that we have with good faith actors is representing the community and being like, this is the type of stuff that they're seeing, right? And try to encourage them to please help by actioning that. So again, no matter who, and by the way, if something's really terrible and a threat, report that to law enforcement, always. But my point is that people should never just kind of see what is happening and just assume somebody else is going to take care of it. It's really important to report, whether that's online in the real world, because data is going to drive policy. Data is going to provide people with the examples that they need to understand what's happening to try to get ahead of it. Beyond that, I'd ask people to think about their own online hygiene. And this is just a reality of the world that we live in now. I think, I think we're basically seeing this sort of generation coming up that is used to basically putting everything, their whole lives online. And we got to start thinking about what does that mean? Whether you're Jewish or not Jewish, right? I mean, you really have to be deliberate about what you're putting online, who you're giving access to, because there's always going to be bad actors that are going to try to prey upon you. And so I do think again, it's about sort of public education. I'll give an example where this happened. I mean, during the pandemic, which feels like it was 17 years ago, it was not. But, when Zoom bombing became a thing, where people started disrupting the one place that people felt that they could get together when they couldn't actually see each other in person, right? Were these Zoom meetings. And you had anti-Semites who were coming on, in some cases, intentionally trying to disrupt it because people didn't know how to secure their Zoom calls.